Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and today I'm sharing with you my preliminary thoughts on our plans for homeschooling the 2018, oh my goodness, 2019 school year. Wow. Okay, so currently I have a 7-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 16-year-old, and my 19-year-old is no longer homeschooling. But by next year, my 16-year-old will also no longer be homeschooling, hopefully. Hopefully he will be a full-time community college student. And so the things that we do at home will not be part of his, I guess, formal academic education, but they'll still be part of his education because I'm hoping to do a family book reading club type thing. So hopefully my 2 teenage sons will participate in that. So what are we going to do with my 7-year-old and my 11-year-old? That's what we're going to talk about today. For my 11-year-old, he's been kind of in between 2 grades when it comes to the Waldorf curriculum. We use the live education Waldorf curriculum for a lot of our main lesson blocks. And if I don't use them exactly for our main lesson blocks, they are certainly the inspiration for a lot of our unit studies. So we have been doing a lot of the 6th grade curriculum, but we did not complete it, not by a long shot. And there are a lot of main lesson blocks that I still want to do for next year. So let me grab that and tell you all about it. All right, so the first thing I want to show you is called The Sentence Sounds a Melody. And this is going to be the grammar and spelling and writing main lesson block for the year. And this is something that I haven't shared a lot on my channel, and that's how the Waldorf curriculum tackles spelling and writing and grammar, because usually it's in some ways incorporated into the main lesson block, and other times I just use my own grammar curriculum that I have created for my children. And so that's a shorter lesson, like a daily lesson that can run parallel to the main lesson block, and so doesn't really need its own main lesson block. So we are going to dive into this one because I think I've only ever done the upper grades grammar and writing curriculum only once before, I think, and so I'm really eager to see the approach and just spend a little time focusing on that area, that subject area. Something else we're going to do is our second block of astronomy. Now we did a 3-week block earlier on in this school year, and I reserved the second part of that block for either later on in the school year or the following school year on purpose, in part because I felt like the math that was going to be involved would be better suited for my son when he got a little bit older. So we're going to be doing that one, and that main lesson block will probably be about 4 weeks. It could be longer. It depends on how long the other main lesson blocks are going to take. And I should also say that the astronomy main lesson block most likely will be a main lesson block that we do earlier on in the year, but I'm not 100% sure. We might save it for a little bit later on in the fall. And in part, it's because this year we had a physics main lesson block that we didn't quite get to. We still may get to it a little bit, but if we don't get to it completely, we're going to open up the school year with that physics main lesson block. And this is something that has consistently happened over the years, and so instead of it being an anomaly, I think it just has to be the way we do it, and that's to add a science main lesson block at the start of the year. And generally my science main lesson blocks are in the springtime. But what's happened over the years, and actually for several years, is that we haven't gotten to all of our science main lesson blocks that were scheduled for the spring, and so they naturally roll over and are what opens our school year. And that's fine because our summer, or rather our fall, or rather when we start school, it's still like summertime, and it just lends itself well to doing a science main lesson block. Whereas maybe in some other parts of the world, or maybe if we started school later and it was more into the fall and days were getting shorter and cooler, then just mentally I'd want to do some of our other main lesson blocks. I know it's strange, but it's just kind of what has worked really well for us. So in general, I should backtrack and say that in the fall, I tend to like to do our language arts or grammar main lesson blocks. If we're going to do a main lesson block, then I want it to start the year. A lot of times grammar and spelling and writing are things that we do daily throughout the entire year. But if we're going to have a main lesson block, I want it to start the year when my students are fresh, when they're eager, when they've had this long rest in the summer and their brains are just really ripe for new, sometimes challenging information. So the fall is a great time for us to do our math main lesson block and our grammar and writing main lesson block, and also to squeeze in a science main lesson block. At the close of the fall and the beginning of winter, it's a great time to do our history main lesson blocks when the days are shorter and we want to do a lot more reading and our brains just feel like they want to absorb rather than contemplate and or regurgitate rather. It just seems like a good time for us to do our history blocks. It's just worked really well for us in the past. And the springtime, when we're just itching to get out and we want to move, it's a really good time for us to do our science main lesson blocks because those tend to involve a lot more hands-on projects and activities and being outdoors in our nature units. So the springtime is a really good time for us to do our science main lesson blocks. So we've covered our grammar and our astronomy. Let me show you our Middle Ages main lesson block. Now this one is going to be huge. So we actually hopefully just have one enormous history main lesson block scheduled for 2018-2019. However, it's actually going to be broken up into smaller main lesson blocks, but it's all going to be basically one time period, but we're going to cover it from different areas of the world. So I have a whole Silk Route unit that hopefully will be as long and as involved as our traditional European Middle Ages unit. So I'm really excited about this one. It was supposed to be done this year. We did not get to it, not by a long shot. And so I'm really eager to really devote a good chunk of time for that in the coming year. We have another science main lesson block. And so what happens is that sometimes our years take on a theme and sometimes it's a history, like we really dive into history. We'll do so many different kinds of history main lesson blocks. And sometimes it's more of like a science, or sometimes it's a handwork year and we're just doing tons of handwork, or sometimes it's a field trip year and we're just constantly out of the house and we're going to museums and we're going on road trips. It's not that we plan it exactly, but sometimes a theme just sort of emerges within our homeschool. And I kind of feel like we have been doing a lot of history and we've just been so like into it for so long that I really feel us coming out of that and really getting into the sciences. And that's just happened organically. And so I have our physics unit. Now this one is for 6th grade, and in our Waldorf curriculum there is a physics main lesson block for 6th grade and for 7th grade. So if we get to the 6th grade one this year, this current year, 2017-2018, we will revisit whatever we didn't get to the following year, and hopefully if we can, we'll add the 7th grade physics main lesson block at the tail end of the school year. Now, so far I've showed you 4 main lesson blocks that are for 6th grade. The 7th grade main lesson block that I want to show you is called European Geography. And this is going to work perfectly with our Middle Ages main lesson block. And so I want to combine those possibly in a way so that we can be doing our geography, which naturally happens with our history units, but I do want to focus it a little bit more. And I want to see what the lessons are for the European Geography main lesson block and see if there are things that I might not have thought about when doing geography with our main lesson blocks. All right, so there are a couple other main lesson blocks in 7th grade that I'm going to hold off on. There's one either in 7th or 8th grade on hygiene. There's one in 8th grade for chemistry. And those things, once you get into the upper grades, you can kind of shift them around a little bit, but I'm going to wait on both of those. There's also the algebra main lesson block, and I prefer to do geometry before algebra. I'd rather give my students as much time to make it through puberty before introducing algebra, I find that their brains are just more capable of understanding it if I wait a little bit longer. Although I have to say that the Waldorf approach to algebra is a very holistic, kind of gentle introduction, and I think that my students could handle it, but I'd rather wait and do some of the other things that I may not have time for if I do algebra this year. All right, so let me show you what I have planned for my 7-year-old. Okay, so for my 7-year-old, I'm going to do the first grade Waldorf curriculum by Live Education. Now, she will technically be in 2nd grade, but I'm going to be doing the first grade curriculum. I tend to wait until my students are about 7 years old before I start this curriculum, and grade 1 for the Waldorf curriculum is one that I follow pretty closely. So we're going to be doing an introduction of all the letters with beautiful stories and illustrations that go along with it. Now, I have used the curriculum in the past, but this time, and for the last 3 children, actually, even for my first child, we departed from the curriculum early on and chose our own stories and our own illustrations that were religious and culturally significant. So I cannot wait to show you those because I'm really happy with the work that we've done, and I think that you'll really like seeing the Waldorf curriculum and the Waldorf philosophy really tailored to a particular culture or religion. Okay, so I'm really excited to share with you that main lesson block for this upcoming year. Now, the other things I have planned for my 7-year-old are watercoloring and drawing. So that's already incorporated into the curriculum, but I do have a couple of additional resources that I'm really excited to dive into, and that is going to be next year's focus. And so I have this book called Learning to See the World Through Drawing. I'm excited to go through this book, probably not with her exactly, but to draw some inspiration from this book in order to put together some lessons that will work well with either the introduction of the letters or with our math curriculum, or just as fun free drawing. Another resource that I have been using and really have enjoyed so far is working with primary colors, and it comes with a DVD set as well as a little manual, and I'm really enjoying the DVD set aside from some of the camera work. But the content of that DVD series has been phenomenal, and even though we've been doing a Waldorf curriculum for many years, I have learned so many new things by watching that video. So we're going to be incorporating a lot of those things into our drawing as well. Something else we're going to be doing is watercoloring, which is so great in like the younger years. And I'm going to be using color dynamics as inspiration. I'm really looking forward to going through this book. And there's already a watercolor main lesson block with the Waldorf curriculum, but I'm excited to dive into these additional resources as well. Form drawing is really big in 1st grade as well, and we have already done main lesson blocks in creative form drawing. There are 2 volumes for this book. There's ages 6 to 10 and 10 to 12, and so we will be working with workbook number 1 and continuing the lessons that we have previously done. That entire playlist is linked down below in case you're curious to see the lessons that we have done so far, which have been I really love them. I really love this book so much, and I have to say that it's so well done. It's really beautiful. The illustrations or the form drawings are really nicely done, and the only thing that I want to do differently from here on out, which I had intended to do before and hadn't, is to add stories to the form drawings. Another book that I want to show you is this book called The Alphabet, and we have a number of Waldorf-inspired alphabet books, and we've just added a new one to our collection, so I'm excited to dive into those and keep those kind of in our homeschool room so that we can be looking at them and reading them and using them as drawing inspiration. Alright, so that kind of rounds out the main lesson blocks that we plan to do for 2018, 2019, oh my goodness. So I hope that it comes in handy for you if you're trying to figure out some of the main lesson blocks that you want to do, or if you're doing a traditional curriculum but you want to add in a unit study into your existing curriculum. You can totally do that. It's a great way to kind of shake things up and mix things up and add a little bit of energy to your existing curriculum. So I would love to hear some of the things that you have planned for the upcoming year. Don't forget that you can leave that down in the comments section below. I've linked a couple of playlists here for you, things that I mentioned in this video. Go ahead and check them out. And don't forget that if you want to see what we're up to on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.